I've always lived by alarms. Alarms to wake up. Alarms to get to class. Alarms to remind me that my laundry was done, or that I had 10 minutes to finish an assignment before the submission portal closed. But that Monday morning felt different. I woke up on my own, without the annoying vibration of my phone. I rolled over, looked at the clock, and realized it was already 8:45. Normally, that would have made me panic. But summer break had just started, and for the first time in years, I didn't have anywhere urgent to be. I pulled the blanket over my head, smiled to myself, and thought, so this is what freedom feels like. My apartment was quiet. I lived in Tacoma, Washington, in a small place above a grocery store. The walls were thin, so usually I could hear carts rolling or the cashier's voice calling out prices. But that morning, it was just me, the hum of the fridge, and the faint sound of birds outside. I got up, made coffee in my old French press, and carried the steaming mug to the window. From up there, I could see the bus stop on the corner. People were already rushing. Ties, briefcases, backpacks bouncing on shoulders. I used to be one of them, always late, always stressed. But now, I just sipped my coffee and thought, not today. It felt good, really good. By noon, I was getting restless. I'm not the type who can just sit inside all day, no matter how much Netflix is calling my name. I needed fresh air. Downstairs, parked against the side of the building, was my bike. I hadn't used it in months. Dust had collected on the handlebars, and the tires looked a little sad. But after a quick pump and a wipe with an old rag, it was ready to go. The first push of the pedals felt strange. My legs were stiff, my balance off. But within a few minutes, I was flying down the street, the wind in my face, the sun warm on my arms. I rode past familiar spots, the park with the giant oak tree, the library I always promised myself I'd visit more often, the bakery where I sometimes treated myself to a blueberry muffin. For the first time in a while, I wasn't thinking about where I needed to go. I just rode until I felt like stopping, and I stopped at the pier. The water was calm, reflecting the blue sky like a giant mirror. Seagulls floated in the air above, and a fisherman sat on the edge with a cooler by his feet. I leaned my bike against the railing and just stood there, breathing in the salty air. It was simple. It was ordinary, but it felt perfect. That's when I noticed the kid. He couldn't have been older than 10. He sat cross-legged near the fisherman, holding a notebook in his lap. His pencil moved quickly across the page. At first, I thought he was doing homework, but when I got closer, I saw he was sketching. A fish, detailed and sharp, was forming on the page. Scales, fins, even the shadows in the water, it was all there. I couldn't help but say, "That's really good." The boy looked up, a little startled, but then smiled. "Thanks. I like drawing things that move." We talked for a while. His name was Aaron. His grandfather was the fisherman beside him, who gave me a nod and a small smile before turning back to his line. Aaron showed me his notebook, full of sketches, birds, bicycles, boats. He had a talent, no question about it. I told him I used to draw when I was younger, but somewhere between exams and work, I'd stopped. He shrugged and said, "You can always start again." That simple line stuck with me. The next few days, I kept riding my bike. Each time, I found myself stopping at new places. A used bookstore tucked between two tall buildings, a coffee cart run by an old couple who always played jazz, a tiny park where an older man practiced Tai Chi every morning. Each spot felt like a secret waiting for me to notice it. And each day, I carried a small sketchbook I bought at the bookstore. Inspired by Aaron, I started doodling again. At first, my lines were clumsy, my hands stiff. But little by little, the shapes began to make sense. A lamppost here, a dog waiting for its owner there, the curve of the water against the pier. I didn't care if it was good. It felt good to do it. And more than anything, I realized how much life I'd been missing while staring at screens or rushing from one obligation to the next. By the end of the week, I felt different. Calmer, lighter, like my chest had more room to breathe. On Saturday evening, I rode back to the pier. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange. Families walked by with ice cream cones. Couples leaned against the railing, and street musicians played soft guitar. Aaron was there again, this time drawing the sunset. When he saw me, he waved. "You brought your sketchbook?" I held it up, smiling. "Yeah, want to see?" We sat side by side, flipping through our pages. His were still far better than mine, but he didn't compare. He just looked, nodded, and said, "I like how you drew the water here. It feels real." It was such a small moment, but it filled me with a quiet kind of happiness. That night, as I locked my bike and walked up the stairs to my apartment, I realized something. This week had been simple. No trips, no big changes, no grand adventures. Just coffee on the balcony, bike rides, sketches, and quiet sunsets. But it was enough. More than enough. Because sometimes, the best stories in life are not about moving to a new city or chasing something huge. Sometimes, they're about slowing down, noticing the little things, and remembering how to breathe. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm again. The habit of rushing was still somewhere inside me, but the silence in my apartment reminded me that I didn't need to go anywhere. Still, I didn't want to waste the morning. I made oatmeal with cinnamon and chopped apples, carried it to the balcony, and watched the street below. Sundays in Tacoma felt different. Slower. The grocery store downstairs opened later, so the usual sound of carts and customers wasn't there yet. Instead, I heard a church bell ringing in the distance, soft footsteps on the sidewalk, and the quiet laughter of two kids riding scooters. For some reason, I thought of my childhood. Sundays had always been lazy days. My mom reading on the couch, my dad working on small projects in the garage, me playing outside until the streetlights came on. I smiled at the memory and thought, maybe I should make Sundays feel like that again. No schedule, just being. Of course, not every day that week was sunny. On Tuesday, the sky turned gray, and by afternoon, rain was falling hard against the windows. Normally, rain made me restless. I used to see it as an excuse to stay inside, scroll through my phone, and complain about the weather. But this time, I decided to try something different. I pulled out my sketchbook, sat by the window, and drew the rain. Not the whole scene, just the drops running down the glass, the way they curved and joined together, leaving streaks. At some point, I noticed time slipping away. An hour had passed without me even realizing it. I laughed quietly to myself. So this is what focus feels like. Later that evening, I made tea, curled up on the couch, and listened to jazz on the radio. The rain kept falling outside, but instead of feeling trapped, I felt safe. Like the storm was happening for me, not against me. A few days later, I was back at the pier. This time, someone new caught my attention. A man in his 30s sat on a stool, playing guitar. His case was open for tips, but what struck me wasn't his skill. It was the way he played with his eyes closed, as if every note carried a memory. I stood there listening, the sea breeze tugging at my jacket. A few people dropped coins into his case. A couple danced quietly near the railing. When he finished a song, I clapped and said, "That was beautiful." He looked up and smiled. "Thanks. You play?" I shook my head. "Not really. I tried when I was younger. Gave up too fast." He chuckled. "Most people do. But music's like drawing or riding a bike. You can always pick it up again." His words echoed Aaron's. You can always start again. I went home that evening with the sound of his guitar still in my head. On Friday, I decided to do something bold. Well, bold for me, at least. Instead of my usual bike route, I kept pedaling until I found myself in a part of the city I'd never explored. The streets were narrower, the buildings older. Murals covered brick walls, and small cafes spilled music and conversation into the sidewalks. I locked my bike outside a cafe that smelled like roasted hazelnut and cinnamon. Inside, the walls were covered with local art, and a chalkboard menu listed drinks with names I didn't recognize. I ordered something called a honey lavender latte. Sweet, floral, and unlike anything I'd ever tasted. Sitting there, sketchbook open, latte in hand, I felt like I was discovering a secret part of the city that had always been waiting for me. That Saturday, I met Aaron and his grandfather again at the pier. This time, his grandfather spoke to me. He had a weathered face, deep lines from years under the sun, and a voice that carried calm. "You come here often now," he said. I nodded. "It feels peaceful." He looked out at the water for a long time before speaking again. "The sea teaches you patience. You wait for the line to pull. You wait for the tide to turn. Most of life is just waiting. But if you can enjoy the waiting, then the catch feels even better." I thought about that long after I left. Patience, waiting, enjoying the in-between. It was something I'd never really practiced before. But maybe, just maybe, it was the thing I needed most. That evening, I sat on my balcony again, sketchbook on my lap, the city slowly quieting below. The air smelled of grilled food from a neighbor's barbecue, mixed with the sweetness of fresh bread from the bakery. Somewhere nearby, someone played guitar, not the same man from the pier, but close enough to remind me of him. I looked at my drawings from the week. Rain on glass, a coffee cup, the pier at sunset. None of them were perfect. Some were messy, rushed, uneven. But together, they told the story of a week where everything slowed down. A week where I learned to notice again. And I thought, if a week can feel this different, what about a month? A year? A life lived this way? The thought didn't scare me. It made me hopeful. For once, I didn't need alarms, deadlines, or big plans. I just needed this. Mornings of sunlight, afternoons of sketching, evenings of quiet. And the simple truth that slowing down was not wasting time. It was living.